Hello and welcome to our discussion today for the 2021 award season's discussion of with our AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander documentarians. My name is Richard Louie. I'm with MSNBC as a news anchor. It is my pleasure to have this conversation with these beautiful people in front of me today. And welcome to a rather auspicious gathering, at least from my perspective, as I get to sit here with what is 2021's I'll call, if you don't mind, all four of you, the royalty, for me at least, because I respect all of you for your accomplishments, not only this year, as we go through 2021 and the award season, and congratulations to all four of you on your films making it into the shortlist, the very esteemed shortlist for the Academy Awards in this great year. And there's so much to be said about getting to this point, as you know, because of what we all have experienced individually and collectively. And so with 76 Days, we have director Hao Wu and producer Jin Xian, who are on the short list for feature documentary. For short documentary, we have Call Center Blues, directed by Geeta Gambhir, and the Speedcubers, our third film represented in this conversation, directed by Sue Kim. Welcome all.
Thanks, Richard.
Great Thank you, Richard.
Thank you for having us.
I don't know if anybody noticed, as I said at the top here, but all of you, and somehow me, are Asian American Pacific Islander, and it was really quite a year that we have had. Even before we got to the short list, and now that we are at the short list. And so I must ask all of you this: as you think of your films individually, why did you do them? What drove you? Geeta, why were you thinking of Call Center Blues? What was the spark? What was the story behind the story?
Sure. So I think for myself, I think coming from an immigrant background, like so many of us here, I think the story of Call Center Blues really fascinated me because it's the story of, a community of people who have been deported from the US, trying to rebuild their lives on the other side of the border in Tijuana. And it deals with the intersection of also opportunistic capitalism. In Tijuana, there are these call centers springing up to recruit the, folks from this community because of their English speaking abilities. And so the sort of irony of that, it was a lens into a way to look at deportation and really the punitive immigration policies that the US is, historically known for, in a way that I think was different and kind of compelling. Yeah. Again, I think a lot of times we talk about these issues ad nauseum and people become very fatigued by them, right? And it's been a really hard 4 years around, and people, again, there's been a lot of terrible anti-Asian violence and xenophobia in general, directed also at Latinx folks, just at anybody, right? Who, and there's been a really huge rise in white supremacy, anti-Blackness, and white nationalism. And I think sometimes the best way to bring attention to these issues for folks is to have a conversation with them that doesn't necessarily hit the nail directly on the head, but looks at it from an angle that they may not have thought of before. And so similarly, there was another film I did about, again, about police brutality, which was for the New York Times, called A Conversation with My Black Son, which was about the perspective of parents raising, Black children, particularly Black boys, and the sort of the struggles that they have to go through in teaching their children about the police and the dangers of police. And similarly, this felt like a way to talk about deportation and to sort of celebrate this really brave community that's growing, in Tijuana, and bring attention to their plight, and hopefully get people engaged, and by not sort of, again, directing something at them that felt like a news piece.
Quickly, what was the seedling? Was it you woke up one day, there was a story you saw, there's a conversation you had?
Sure. So there was a story. I actually read an article in the New York Times, and I think like everyone, had been following over the last really 8 years kind of the policies that had gotten really terrible around family separation, around, you know, again, with folks, migrants trying to enter the country, and just the horrendous policies at the border that were already cruel prior to the last 4 years of the Trump administration, and just became
Right.
that much worse. You know, that there was really high, it was really, there was sort of an additional layer of cruelty added in the last 4 years. And I was in one day when reading about these, you know, I was following the news like everyone else, I think, kind of miserably. And then one day I found an article in the Times about the community in Tijuana and the idea of these call centers. And interestingly, the call centers are not just springing up for English speakers. They're also, because there are a lot of folks who speak other languages who also travel through, and you know,
Right.
there's a large number of Haitians, so there are French-speaking call centers that come up, and then there's a lot, you know, there's Spanish-speaking call centers
Right.
as well for that, and just the idea of these call centers that become sort of that, not, they exploit the community, but they also in some ways are a safe haven. And when folks are deported, they are often pulled between, you know, the call centers, the cartels, and then, you know, sometimes the streets, you know, where because they oftentimes, with the struggle of being displaced and separated from the only home they've ever known, they might fall into addiction, or, you know, again, they try to return, they try to cross the border again. So it was it was a news story that really sparked it.
Being a journalist, I sort of sniffed that out a little bit, and also being in California and spending some time on that Mexico-U.S. border, Mexico-California border, and a frequent visitor to Tijuana as a young person many moons ago. It's great to see the layers beneath the layers, right? And that's the power of documentary filmmaking. Now, another layer that I saw, Sue, also, as we go to the second short that is again shortlisted, the Speedcubers, I saw a lot of that in me, given I was one of those kids that sat around, studied all the diagrams, and by golly, I couldn't do it in 7 seconds, but I was able to get it done underneath a minute. So I felt like, okay, it's all gone now, but it's, you know, that's what documentary filmmaking does to you, right? You got to clear the shelves to learn new things. But what inspired you to do Speedcubers about the Rubik's Cube?
Yeah, so it came very naturally to me because I'm actually a speed cubing parent. So my son is a speed cuber, and he started 4 years ago. And so he dragged me to his first competition, and immediately I was like, oh my God, this insane, crazy, quirky, charming world, you know, someone must have made a documentary about this. But we became very embedded within that community. Like that's literally our weekend community. We go on road trips to competitions. We fly to bigger competitions. We're friends with all the other families. And it's just like this really wonderful, idyllic community that is so kind, so like inherently decent. The sportsmanship that you see in the film is very real. Like they really cheer each other on. When someone breaks a world record, the entire room is just ecstatic for that person. So it's this microcosm of a universe that was so it's so different than the current world that we live in. So I wanted to make a film that showed what can happen when we try to reach like across the aisle to our opponent and find some connectivity there and some shared bonding versus this sort of current landscape of everything is so divisive and fraught. And especially once I stumbled upon the story of Felix and Max, there couldn't have been a more well, they're very different, you know, and you wouldn't think that they have so much in common. They live on different continents, but they have such a beautiful friendship, and it shows such empathy and inclusivity and just compassion. And it's also what I think is it's a very aspirational male relationship that we don't always see. And so I really wanted to put that out in the universe as well, just like a different anecdotal data point to like combat all of the sort of day-to-day harsh and divisive rhetoric that we're hearing.
So what about the female cubers? Come on now.
You know what? If I ever did a follow-up to this, I'm not going to, but if I ever did, I want to dive into that issue because it yeah, it bothers me that there's not more girls and women participating. And in all of my interviews, I asked all the cubers why they thought that was happening. No one really has a good answer, because there's nothing about cubing that is inherently more predisposed to males versus females. Like, it really is
Right?
memorization, it's pattern recognition, and it's fine motor skills. So I agree. I'm on a mission to try and get increase the population of female keepers.
Speedcubers too. Speedcubers too. Speedcubers too. Hey, how Wu Jin Tian. Let's get into now the other category, and that is documentary feature. Congratulations to you as well as we hit our third film.
Thank you, Richard.
And we got some clapping. Yep. It is, you know, as a journalist, as I mentioned earlier, for me, this is a story that I've covered ad nauseum. And maybe that's not the proper term, actually, as of today. I will retract that, and I'll say it's the story of our time that we've been covering and that we've needed to. But I'll start with both you, Hao, and Jean. And the question is, what inspired you to do that along the way of living through it, right? Because you were living through it too, but then you a switch flipped. We'll start with you, Hao.
Yeah, I think in 2020, COVID-19 has become really personal for almost everyone on this planet. I think for me personally, I flew back to Shanghai to spend Chinese New Year with my parents and my sister's family on the day Wuhan was put under lockdown. So obviously I didn't pick that day to fly back, but it was just made the trip extremely strange and eerie and left a strong impression on me, because as soon as Wuhan was put under lockdown, the rest of China automatically shuts down as well. So spending Chinese New Year in China's largest city during China's largest family holiday, whereas nobody was walking on the street, all the restaurants, everything was closed. And it was, and everybody just locked themselves inside an apartment and scrolling on social media, trying to figure out what happened, not knowing how long the lockdown will last, not knowing when I will be able to bring my kids to see their grandparents again. And then really quickly after, my grandpa was diagnosed with late stage liver cancer, and he passed away in early March. I wasn't able to fly back at that time from New York to say goodbye to him. All of that made this the topic really personal. So I started, just really wanted to make a film, trying to figure out what happened at the very beginning. As a lot of filmmakers, my instinct at that time in February was investigative. But really quickly, I realized two things. One is really hard to remotely do investigative documentary work, and with Wuhan pretty much under lockdown as well. Secondly, I was able to find two wonderful collaborators whose footage just about the front line, the human story on the front line, really moved me. So gradually we started to shift in the focus of the film away from investigation into more highlighting the universal human stories of people trying to survive, trying to help each other survive on the front line. I think later on, as we move further along during the production and post-production, it became really obvious to us that COVID-19 has become such a topic about statistics, about our political divide, either domestically and also internationally. So I feel like a lot of times we forget about, in our discussion about COVID-19, we forget about the individual human sufferings and how horrible COVID-19 really is, and also how we can, as the human race, how we can work together, really try to survive together while losing that collective community spirit. A lot of times we tend to focus on scapegoating, blaming each other, or protect our own individual families. So I think, in the end, I think my team and I, we really wanted to make the film to highlight the common humanity and maybe point out that there's light at the end of the tunnel if we're willing to work together.
And by the way, everybody interrupt each other as you feel. I'm used to that, being a news anchor over at MSNBC. There's a lot of people that like to talk loudly and shake hands and fists and things like that. Don't do that. Be nice, but feel free to interrupt each other. I do not mind that. Gene, you and Hal were working on this together. Tell me about how that came about, and then to the film itself, when you were working together on it, what was it that stood out that said, this could be something?
So last March, actually, I was executive producing the Asian American series with Geeta. I was in LA, and that was when actually the beginning of the lockdown happened in the United States. And I never thought I would be working on a pandemic film with Hal last March. So I knew, Hal and I, we had a long time collaboration for the past 10 years. This is our fourth films together. And so whenever he has an idea, he'll come to me and see if there's a viable story. So he came to me in early April with 3 scenes of the opening scene where the nurse lost her father and couldn't even say goodbye. And the second scene was the young couple giving birth and couldn't see the baby for over a month. And the final scene he shared with me was the nurse who gave back the item to the daughter at the very end of the scene. So that was the beginning, middle, and end already. And just based on these 3 scenes, I saw something really moving and special. Even though you can't see anyone's eye, face, full face, you could only see people's eyes through, the mask. And so also because I knew Hal was going through great grief at the time, losing his grandfather, and he was in lockdown in Atlanta with his family, I say, just go edit the film. We have no budget, no money, and we have nothing to lose. So I just say, just keep working. And so 2 months later, he gave me the full assembly. And that's when I said, oh, we got to do something with this film, even though it was an experiment for me. So I submitted to Toronto International Film Festival, and luckily we were accepted. That's when I have to fund budget and, I'm not a producer professional, I'm an editor, right? And I have to put on the producer hat very quickly, and we were very lucky.
Wow, that's serendipitous, right? As many projects are. And I'm going to get to lots of issues in a short amount of time. So I thank all of you for speaking with brevity and with weight and a lot of meat on the bone, if you will, as we move along. Geeta, what does Call Center Blues say about our human existence that we need to hear about today?
Sure. So I think, it's interesting. Call Center Blues, to me, really speaks about resilience and just kind of the power of people to adapt and persevere, which I feel like, here we are in the midst of a global pandemic, all having to do that. And Hal and Gina, I imagine that, you're with your film too, you see so much of that. And Sue, also yours, the idea that what can be, again, your film is the idea of how people can come together around a common issue that they are passionate about, and how, even something that's meant to be a competition can uplift everybody. And 76 Days sort of shows the struggle of of us as human beings trying to work through what is an international crisis. I think for Call Center Blues too, it shows how, sort of the resilience of the human spirit, also this community that, despite all odds, right, the kind of the worst possible circumstances, really being deported is akin to being incarcerated. It's another form of, of incarceration. But that, these folks are still trying to build community, trying to help each other, trying to come together. Like you see among our characters, a character, Roberto, forgive me, a participant, I should say, that's the proper word. One of our participants is working for an organization that supports deported veterans, and the other one has opened his own call center specifically so that he can bring in deportees, as he once was, who might be struggling, and offer them, whatever they might need, support, also his own experience, and they also look to help those folks who are constantly coming to the border from South America, Central and South America, who they're also trying to help. So just the idea of that instead that kind of resilience is something too that I hope we can take away that spirit from the film and kind of do better, try to maybe think about doing better ourselves. You know, we have been very polarized, as Hao so well said, and we like everything now. There's so many attempts to pull us apart, and fighting back against that, I think, is what's critical. And now, even though we have a new administration and there is hope, there's still so much work to be done to repair. And I had a really amazing conversation with Vince Warren from the Center for Constitutional Rights the other day, and he said something so powerful to me. He said, you know, in this country in particular, because, you know, which has laws that are quite punitive, he said that people have always been criminalized and punished for seeking their freedom, and that starts with runaway, you know, again, with when you look back at slavery, the history of, you know, slavery in this country, enslaved Africans who ran away, you know, again, seeking their freedom, were penalized. And the same policies apply to migration. And in a way, and that is something that I think, you know, hopefully, you know, the film, and even in not even if it's a subtle way, can get people to think about, you know, that's something that we want to change.
Yeah, Gita, what I took away from it, both personal and professional, you know, my grandparents coming to the United States illegally, I immediately thought of that desire of the human spirit to come to a better place, that place they think that is better, and being a grandson, therefore, of illegal immigrants. And I use that term purposefully, which is a different gathering for all of us to have at one point, is that stereotype of what they may be or may not be. And I think what you show in Call Center Blues is still that desire for a better human condition. And we all share that, but we sometimes forget that. Yep. And so that's what I enjoyed about your particular film and what you were able to bring forward.
Thank you.
How you got it. Don't stop. How, you know, and I think about 76 Days. There are a lot of stories about the human spirit, but tell me, what does it say about the human condition? You pick it, that we need to hear about today.
Yeah, so during the production and post-production of 76 Days, I spent a lot of time reading about past pandemics. So every time a pandemic happened, it just seems like it's in our human nature to blame others for our own failures. And it's always some other people's fault. So when I first started editing this film, it was emotionally pretty hard for me because we were living through a time in the US witnessing the administration's utter failure, right? And responding to that. And also to really don't know how long the lockdown in the US will last. And lastly, I think it's Black Lives Matter protests started happening all over the country, and as well as rising anti-Asian racism, right? So, but then I was editing this film, looking through the footage. What I saw was there was still ample evidence of human beings, even in such dire circumstances as during a pandemic, they were still capable of being nice to each other, of being able to reaching out and just hold hands and to comfort elders who feel so alone and scared. So that gave me hope, honestly. I feel like editing this film, I keep on telling people, like, people always ask me, was it difficult to edit this film? I'm like, it was difficult because I was crying half of the time when I was editing. But at the same time, I feel like it's almost like a therapy for me. It's keep on reminding me on a daily basis that we, in addition to our tendency to be nasty to each other, right? That's human nature, but also we have the other side in our nature of being kind.
Of being kind, Gene, and you saw that in the characters, the nurses, for instance, as one great example of still exhibiting what I don't think us on the outside, right? I wasn't in there, but of still exhibiting the desire to be human in a time where all of that was really torn down. You know, I'm in New York City, and really all of a sudden, you know, things changed pretty quickly about what it meant to be human. And these nurses who were right in the middle of it, you know, the drawings, the smiles, or the humanity that they showed. Gene.
It's also appreciation. I think, you know, for example, you know, I actually just had my annual checkup with my doctor. And he expressed how difficult mentally it is for his whole team. And I just have such a, even more, I mean, I always respect my doctor even more for them. There's one scene, if you remember, was when the nurse said goodbye to the man who was leaving with a couple, they were all spread down, they were leaving. That moment lasted so long because they just keep, the patient who was leaving, this older man, just so grateful for him saving his life. And just those long linger goodbye, it really is just way showing appreciation for the frontline workers. And also just me being locked down this whole year. I'm in my mom's basement now since last March. I really appreciate the time that I have with her, even though we're all living in Zoom land now. But it really, I think, even with neighbors, we have to help each other now. So that's what I really also came out of it. It's not just the kindness, it's the gratitude.
Yeah, the personal lessons we learned, right? Just by watching that, of gratefulness of what we have or what we can have that's so accessible to us. Sue, what scene, Jean was sharing a couple scenes. What scene stood out for you in the Speedcubers that told us about our human condition today that we need to hear?
Oh, I don't know if I've ever viewed it with such a large lens, but I think there's lots of little moments within the film that show us a very sort of ideal model of how to be a good human, how to be generous with each other, and how to be kind. I think that the scene that it always kind of gets me, and it doesn't get a lot of other people. So it's very specific, I think, to what I see Felix's character as, is at the very end. And I hope I'm not spoiling this for anyone, but Felix has lost the 3x3, which is the big event. Max has lost that one as well, but Max won all these other awards, and they're both sort of grieving their own loss, and they're both also at the same time very concerned about how the other person is doing because they love each other so much. But the thing that killed me was they're backstage and they're waiting for the podiums to be called, and Max is just kind of sitting there with his mom, not paying attention, and Felix is very alert waiting for Max's name to be called. And as soon as it's called, he goes back and he's like, Max, you got to go get your trophy. And he literally helps clear the crowd for him so Max can go to accept the podium. And that was such a moment for me because that used to be Felix. Felix used to be the champion that won all the awards. And here's someone who just lost. He lost and kind of lost in front of his friends and family. And he's still more concerned about helping his next successor usher him onto stage to take his trophy. And I just thought that's just kindness. That's the kind of kindness that's small and gestural and you don't see and you don't celebrate it necessarily, but that's the kind of kindness I think that we, ideally should all aspire to exemplify.
He not only saw the vulnerability, he accepted the vulnerability that he was expressing to help the next champion. Yeah. And to see that at that, look, I'm an older person, so it's not like I look at all other folks that aren't old as me and say they don't have these qualities, but it was really great to see vulnerable person helping a person that is vulnerable. That is what we somehow think is a weakness, but it was shown as a strength on both sides. Yeah. And that is, I think, an important thing we need to learn today when we talk about the human condition. I know it's a big word, big phrase or whatever, but I know that all of you were working towards that, right? Because the purpose is to improve our human condition in the best way we can through this craft. So there's some interesting things here. And I said at the top, but I wanted to get to it now, in that all of you are Asian American Pacific Islander, and this could be the year that we have a group vote, right? They're going to say, this is the slate. We're going to just go boom, boom, boom. We're going to, all three of you all three of your projects will get through, and that would be something else. Tell me what it was like, briefly, to go through who you are and where you're at in your career. Some of you have changed roles recently for this or have done it over a longer period of time. You have thought about, and it's been brought up so far, about who you are individually and what that has brought to you as a professional as well as to your particular project today. Who wants to go first?
Actually, Richard, yes, I'm an editor turned producer reluctantly because, but actually I want to turn the table to you, Richard. You also had a film that was qualifying called Sky Blossom, and you had a prior career. I want to hear, why do you do what you do, get into documentary? I know each one of you, like, how was a microbiologist, MBA turned film documentary filmmaker? Guido's wonderful editor turned to an amazing director. And Sue, you were in the commercial world. And why did you get into documentary? So Richard, you start.
Doggone it, Gene. And none of us can say no to Gene. Gene, it was because I was caring for my dad for 7-8 years, long distance, and being a caregiver for a person with Alzheimer's. Over that course of time, it certainly asks you to reevaluate who you are and what your values are overall. And so I just started to learn things. So I said, got to do a film. So I did it on caregivers, student caregivers. That's what did it. Did I answer your question?
Not really, but.
Well, I asked you why I did it. I mean, my day job is
yes.
Yeah, my day job is as a news anchor over at MSNBC, and doing the long distance caregiving is what inspired me. And so I just had to do it. Just taking care of my dad just opened up a new vision on the world. And how all of you, when your eyes open up that way, you do something about it. And so that's why.
Yeah, are you gonna make another one?
The plan is yes, but those are big dice to roll.
You know what they say about documentary? Once you start, you can't stop.
No.
Yeah.
It's like something that every time we make one, we're like, I'm never doing this again.
Exactly.
Like, I'm done. And then
I respect for that very reason, I respect all of you so much, because just going through it once and it being a 4-year journey, I don't know how you're all filmmakers, because I'm like, wow, that is complete love for your profession and your art. And my stories are usually 24 hours or 8 hours or 4 hours in gestation, and to go through what you do every time simultaneously, probably too, is really quite amazing and impressive. So now that Gene has thrown that question out to us, let's go around the pike. And Gene, just go thumbs up. I answered your question, right? Because I always make sure I want to answer your question.
Yes,
okay, great. Okay, and I won't go to you first, Gene, because that will feel like it's a reprisal of some sort. And it's not that. So I'm going to go to Sue. Sue, tell us about that question that Gene posed for us.
Yeah, totally. So as Jean said, I come from a commercial production background. So I produced like lots of Nike TV commercials and Adidas. And so being on set and on production is my sort of daily professional life, but I never really meant to veer into documentary filmmaking like as an intention. It just sort of happened because of my personal connection to the cubing story, which was that, my son was a Speedcuber. And it got to the point where I was trying to do my job and get this film off the ground at the same time. And I just couldn't do both. My job was just really taxing, and I didn't have enough energy, the energy that I wanted to bring to this project, which was a true passion project for me. So I just quit my job, and I just decided I'm going to dedicate, and which is crazy, but I knew it was what I needed in order to finish the film. Like I had to kind of hold my feet to the fire and be like, you're going to finish this no matter what, because you have to now. You quit your job, you told everyone in your life you're going to make this film, now you have to do it. And so that's what prompted the turn into documentary filmmaking. And then even then I was trying to get other people to direct it, because I didn't have a lot of confidence that I could do it. And there were several people that were interested, but they just didn't bring the same passion to the story that I did and my producer partner did. And I kept telling my producer partner what the story was and all the quirks of the characters and all the different tension points we should lean into. And he just took me aside one day. He's like, you have to direct it. It's your story. It's in your head. All you're going to be doing is breathing down someone's neck if you try and hire someone else. And that's not good.
You're super annoying, right?
Yeah, totally. I would be literally on the mic and like, no, he's like, just do the damn thing. And so that's how I fell into this really. And what happened was I loved it. I had so much fun making the film, and it was so. I mean, I really felt like there were times where I was like in flow state, where it really. So I stumbled upon this, and now I'm in love. But I think, as Geeta and Hal also said, it is the hardest thing ever as well. So there were so many times during the filming of this or the making of it that I thought to myself, I'm never doing this again. I cannot go through this again. And then the minute it ended, I was like, what's next? What's, it's really,
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Yeah.
It's a cult. It's a cult. You're joined the cult. Yeah, that's crazy.
Who wants to go next?
I guess I can go. I think I was born and raised in China. Growing up, I had never met anyone who made a career in anything artistic. So, and even though I was really into, stories and telling stories, but then, my parents and teachers at school pushed me into STEM fields. And I came to the US, my first pursuing graduate study in molecular biology. And after that, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in a laboratory, and then didn't know what else to do. So I went to business school. And after that, I went to work in Silicon Valley and really enjoyed it, but still felt like there's something missing in my life, and suffered existential crisis when Dr. China started making films. I guess for me, filmmaking, like when I was younger,
That's quite a leap right there. The existential crisis of China and then films. It's like,
yeah,
it's
no, I
almost
just
like
want
a
to try
chia
something
pet.
different. No, I just want to
Yeah.
try something different. I met
Yeah.
some filmmaker friends who kind of encouraged me to pursue it. I guess for me, it was this desire to sing. When I was younger, I really loved singing, but now obviously I lost my voice. I can't sing anymore. It's just that you see so many wonderful stories. You see so much beauty in this world. You want to express it, and filmmaking happened to be the tool or the way I could express myself, express how I see the world, express all the beautiful complexity in this world, which I sometimes I don't think people are aware of enough. So in all my film, I really try to showcase a different side that maybe the media haven't put a lot of emphasis on.
Well, how about this one? Since you're talking to the media, what's your favorite note? Since you're a wannabe singer, what's your favorite note?
Oh no, I don't have a favorite note. I'm just like, Anyway,
Oh, come on.
Can we cut this out?
I'm learning a new thing today about how I didn't know he want to be a singer.
No, I was. I mean, I'll show you a photo. When I was in college, I was participating in all the singing competitions and putting a headband around my head, and I permed my hair. I was like, wanted to become a rock star, but that's for my next life, not in this life.
There's a film in that somewhere. There's like a documentary about your lost dream where you.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
yeah, I was in love with Wham. I was a huge fan of Wham.
Now I know why.
Yeah, I think we all need to come together and make that film about you.
So on that note to be heard, we'll go to Geeta.
And actually for Geeta, it's really amazing. Like you went from an editor. How do you make that transition? Because I know that's the hardest transition to make.
Well, Jean, you just did it. And I feel like Jean, as you know, so I started, so I actually never, it's funny, even though my parents would have wanted it differently, I always sort of, veered towards the arts and caused them a lot of stress and pain and suffering, but the essentially I began, I studied animation in college actually, which I loved art and animation. And then I was lucky enough to get an internship with Spike Lee on his film Malcolm X. And so that was and he actually made the connection between animation and editing, and like sequential art and editing. He put me in the edit room. And then I worked with him and a number of other feature directors, but I was like, the apprentice editor, the first assistant or the second assistant editor, like for a number of years in narrative films. And that's how I learned. But I learned under, Spike Lee and the great Sam Pollard, who is still my, my mentor and kind of my everything. Someone who taught me so much and is so generous and wonderful and kind. And so I came up under them the most, as far as working. And then Sam segued into directing. Sam Pollard, I watched him, do that as well. And I've always sort of wanted to model my career after him, but then I figured out at some point in my life that he doesn't sleep, and so that became, I was like, well, maybe not this part, maybe this part actually is not fun, but I think maybe Jean, like you, there was a number of about 10 years ago, I would say 11 years ago, I realized I was becoming a very cranky editor. Like I was not, I was just kind of, I was becoming the type of editor who was like shoving the director.
I was cranky to how 10 years ago. Yes.
And just being like, just let me do this. You don't know what you're doing. And also as you get, older, I've worked, you're kind of more seasoned. And then, it takes longer to direct a documentary film, far longer than it does to edit it. Right. So I had more films under my belt than a lot of the directors I would work with. And, and I was like, maybe I need to branch out. So I need to try something new, maybe gain some empathy for the director. And also just, I was starting to feel like I was flatlining a bit. And so then I decided to try directing and have gained a ton of empathy for the directors that I used to be hostile to and be like, why didn't you get that shot? And what's wrong with you? And, like, how could you miss that moment? And now I'm like, oh my God, now I'm in their seat. And, it's been very eye-opening, and I've been fortunate to work with amazing folks like Jean, like you, and but I still think it's interesting for me. The basis has always been like, I guess Sue, like you, because I began in narrative, so I think it's still the way that I think about films. But yeah, I'm happy to have made that transition, though. I do feel like the editing, I'm like Eugene, definitely, editing in documentary film is really like co-directing in a lot of ways. Oftentimes there's no script, you're just kind of given the material, very different than narrative. So I feel like it was great training, for the process, to be able to direct.
Jean, back at you now, and your change, typically editor for many years, a mentor to many who are editing, and now producer, executive producer, you name it, you got it all now.
I'm going back to editing still. Yes, it's my first love. But I do love mentoring. Especially when I started out 30 years ago, I had no mentor, like Asian American mentor. And I just am so happy with ADOCS, with CAAM, with, everyone. We have a community now. And it's just, it just makes me happy.
Yeah, and as you were my mentor on my first ever documentary, so is Don Young. ADOC and CAAM, you're right, absolutely there from the beginning. David Magdale also throughout the entire process, who would sit with us every week. And I wanted, and if I can, just keep it to 30 seconds, everybody, how the evolution has sharpened your creativity and your storytelling acumen, right? Because you're evolving, and that evolution breaks things and creates things, right? You get stronger in the process as you evolve. And all of these things, as you've all changed, has made you a better storyteller, a better documentarian. Jane, you first, since you were last.
Okay, well, 30 seconds or less. I think it's go back to the fundamental. It's still like how everybody's different. No one makes the same film. So when I watch a film, when I get on a film, it's the ingredients. How do I react to the, like it's it's the basic. It's, I don't think I really evolve. I am still the me, it's how I feel about the footage,
You take on more risky mentees. That's what you've done. Gotcha. I'm going to go around my counterclockwise. So I know it may be different for
Sure.
everybody else, but I'm just doing my counterclockwise on my screen. How that evolution, how did it break something but create something stronger in who you are as a storyteller?
Absolutely. I think my first training in science really taught me not to buy into any prevailing narrative in anything, always questioning, always trying to figure out what are some of the other things that might be missing. So always trying to tell the complexity in things. And also as an immigrant, I spent half my life in China, half my life here. I feel like I always, I'm always drawn to the nuances, right? The nuances in each culture. I tend to definitely want to avoid the stereotypes, and I get a lot of joy try to review something and something new that the other side doesn't know, that doesn't even know about.
Gita.
So for me, it's interesting. I think I agree with both Jean and Hal, that I think that for me also there's sort of the fundamentals of what you were taught and the way that you perceive the world, right? I think every filmmaker has their lens, and I think I try, even though I know that I'm bringing my lens to the work I do, and my lens, like I said, because I come from a narrative that was a background that was narrative and animation. That was sort of animation was my first love, and then narrative. My films, I always try to see them first as story. Like how is this a story that anyone will care about? Like how do I tell this as a story? Because oftentimes when we do social justice based work, it's like the question is like, why is this not news? Or how does it play out? How will people fall in love with the participants? Will they, will feel like they've walked in their shoes? So I think, but then I'm also trying to push, to also push out from my lens and make sure that my team is really important to me too. That there's representation on my team, inclusion, and also just I try really hard, coming from an editor's perspective, being an editor, I think that taught me, maybe it taught you too, Jean, to be super collaborative. So I really enjoy that process of like listening to everyone on my team and making sure that they kind of have room to also grow and bring, and add to the creativity, because I think that makes the best film, when everyone is really empowered to do their work.
Sue, to you, how did the zigzagging changes in career, breaking stuff and building stuff up in 30 seconds make you a better documentarian, a better storyteller, you think?
Well, I would echo what Gita said so articulately, where every filmmaker comes to the subject matter with their very specific lens. And I think my experience is many people thought I was totally crazy for quitting my job and making a documentary about speed cubing, but because from their lens, it doesn't seem like a very valuable or interesting story. But from my lens, it was like a gold mine of really interesting characters and storytelling and human truth. And I think knowing that made me feel more confident. Like that's why I'm doing this, because I have a lens on this world that maybe other people don't have. So I would say just I learned to trust my gut and to trust my voice. And there's a reason why I'm drawn to specific subject matter, and that's maybe because my lens is needed to show these subjects in a different light, maybe.
I want to finish with this. Say anything you want, but not for as long as you want. But say anything you want. And I just want to reflect on something historically for those who are, been in the industry longer. This is really quite a year. 17 documentary features, 7 documentary shorts, making it to the qualification. Sure, the numbers are up, but wow. Wow, you have to edit all those wows out, but it is, being the newbie and just looking at the numbers, since I'm a numbers guy, what a year. And I want all of you to go all the way, and even if we have to change the rules, we'll do it. But all of you will go all the way, because I know we got 2 shorts here, so you'll go all the way, and maybe in different categories. How about that? But this has been something amazing for those who look like us, and it's important that looking like us means a lot of different things. It means being people of color. It means different genders. It means our point of views. It means our geography. It means our ages. It means our religions. It means everything. It means all of those things together. So it's been quite a year to see 17 and 7 from the AAPI community. Sue, close up and tell me what your reflection is on this year and what it might be.
Oh man, I mean, I hope this is the year of change. It feels like it's starting to, and obviously we're still in the middle of a lot of hard times, especially with the rise in Asian American violence and things. But what I found through this film is this beautiful community. I can't tell you how, like Jean and Don Young and people have come that they don't know me, and they've offered help and generosity and support. And so I cling to that. I cling to community, and I cling to connectivity.
Amen, as they say. Gita.
So I just want to echo Sue that I feel like my film too really taught me so much, like I said earlier, about resilience. This community has been so incredibly, this community of deportees in Tijuana has been so incredibly brave and resilient, and their willingness to reach out and help others, from who are struggling, even around issues of migration and deportation has been so powerful to me. It's been a big lesson, and it's kind of helped me believe that we can make it through, that there are ways to make it through, even what has seemed like an incredibly daunting and kind of dangerous time. So, and I think too, for this year, though, I have to say I am so excited about the representation I see in the categories, for that of films, and just again, being in this cohort, it's really amazing. And I feel like I honestly feel like together we rise. And for us, there's other, even in the shorts category, Sue, I'm sure you echo this, but there's a bunch of amazing films, like, and there's a number of BIPOC folks who are, again, who are sort of in the category. So whoever, if one of us wins, we all win. Like, I feel like you're Speedcubers, Sue. If one of us wins, we all win. It is a step for us as BIPOC folks, and that is all that matters.
Well said. Hal?
Yeah, I think I'm truly, truly proud of what this community has achieved in the past year. But at the same time, I feel like there's so much work to be done, especially witnessing the rising wave of anti-racism and also violence now. It's really disheartening. You still feel like, America, this country sometimes still tend to other us, view us as outsiders. That's very distressing, but at the same time, as storytellers, the thing we can do is really be proud of our heritage and continue to tell our stories with our own unique voice. I feel like together we can do this.
Jean?
Yeah, I actually really want to actually thank the Academy for diversifying the 2020. We reached 30% international members now, which is huge. I think that's also another reason why there's so many of us we got into qualifying and into the shortlist. But for 76 days, I just want the film to be, 20 years from now, people watch this film and learn from it. And the enemy is the virus. I just want everybody to really understand that. It's not the face, we have a common enemy, and we have to come together as a whole world. I got my vaccine 2 days ago, but until the whole world is vaccinated, we can't be working alone anymore.
Yeah, that's a great way to finish this, Jean. And what you said, how Gita and Sue as well, is that we're not alone. Certainly, this has been where we're all at once the same. And it's happened in our lifetime, right? And I think that is what all of you strive to do in your ways, and through your lenses and through your storytelling. And it's amazing that we're able to have this conversation today. And my personal best wish to all of you to make it to the next level. I am going to be voting, although I don't vote, at least when I'm watching. I'll be voting as a slate for all of you. I'm not hinting at all. Don't even worry. But I am so behind what all three of you have done, and as was said by Geeta and Sue, by energy. If one of you wins, all of us win every single time. I see it that way. And so thank you for being here, representing three great films: Speedcubers, Call Center Blues, forgot the Speedcubers, and 76 Days. Thank you for gathering for this conversation. Four great AAPI filmmakers on this afternoon. Thank you, and I look forward to the award season. Absolutely, for all of you. Have a good day, eh?
Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you.